Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this morning. I'm Chamberlain. So,
we're still enjoying the cool here in Abuja. Good morning and welcome. Hope the sun has risen where you are. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, in Lagos, we're enjoying the cool as well, Maokpe, and it's a very beautiful morning today. In case you are wondering what the date is, for those who always forget, it's 26th day in the month of June, 2024. Welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it is this day, 26th day, that we take you to Kano. Have a look at this, guys. I mean, what a scenery here. Yeah, 26 degrees centigrade incidentally, both in Abuja and Kano, and then humidity also there. So this, you know, sometimes we call it the ancient city of Kano. It's got some historic names. Kofarua, this area here, it's a business district actually, but historically, we understand it's called Kofa Waika, which is incidentally named after a certain person. You know how you get to a certain area really early, and so the city might take after your name. So that is what you see in that sprawling city. And then you see the development also kicking in thick and fast. So beyond the Emirate tussle, which you might be inundated with, this is a lovely sight and sounds here.
Well, Kano does not want to be called the ancient city. When you look at the infrastructure that is currently being developed around Kano, they want to be modern. I hope that, you know, they are still preserving a bit of that history, because for those who know Kano, they know that, you know, the main parts of the city used to be walled off, and that's where the Emirates used to be, and the new settlers were settled in Sabongari, those places outside of the city walls. But those walls now are fast crumbling. It's very difficult to know where the walls started and where they are ending, even though we understand that some parts of it are still standing, and I think it will be in our best interest to preserve as much of it as we can, while we're also taking into consideration modern infrastructural developments, as we're currently seeing in the Kofa Rua area, which is what you're currently seeing. Beautiful roads with lovely interchanges, really worth admiring. I'm just so sad that every single time that I have, you know, been, will I say assigned now. Assigned is not the word I'm looking for, but every time I have thought I was going to visit Kano, something will come up, and lo and behold, destination will change. I mean, remember once we had an experience where we just stopped at Kano Airport and we had to go back to Lagos that evening.
Yeah.
It was quite an experience. So for some strange reason, I still haven't visited the city of Kano.
Oh.
And right now, the current Emirate tussle is not making it any easier, because there are those who are afraid that, you know, there could be, you know, tensions could escalate at any point in time. So it is in the best interest of the Kano state government to ensure that this tussle is, you know, put behind it once and for all, and Emir is decided, and there is peace in Kano, because the opportunities that they currently will be missing as a result of what is currently going on.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, I have visited Kano, how many years ago now? Well, let me not just embarrass myself, but suffice to say that was sometime late in the 80s. And believe me, the site we're seeing right now is nothing close to what Kano was then. It is an extremely beautiful city. And, you know, one good thing that I can say about, you know, views like this for our viewers, Maokwe and Chamberlain, is when we hear northern Nigeria, we imagine some dusty hamlets. This is Kano City. It's in the northern part of Nigeria. In fact, it's in the northwest of Nigeria. If you want to drive to Kano, of course you can. It's just maybe just about 16 hours. You know, it's a road trip, right? So anyway, that's just something for you to see. But what do you think? A road trip, Maokwe? But not from Lagos.
Well, yes, indeed. By the way, go ahead. Tell us, which location would you like to see? I think it will be interesting to hear from you. Yeah, let's see that. All right, so that said, let's take you through the dailies. Okay.
This morning, the papers have different stories about governors. Let's begin with the stories concerning governors about the minimum wage. Vanguard newspaper, Tinubu to consult governors OPS on minimum wage according to the federal government. The story is on page 5, says he can't take decision on new minimum wage alone. Insists the input of governors, LGAs, OPS vital. Era of paying slave wage gone, according to Labour. Any amount above 62,000 Naira will create crisis, job loss, according to NECA. Find the details of that story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The Nigerian Tribune has the same story, but a different twist to it. FEC steps down memo on new minimum wage. Stories on page 3. Tinubu to consult governors, private sector, according to Information Minister, says wage award will continue for now. We expect new minimum wage implementation by July ending. That's from Labour. The Daily Times newspaper has the same story. FEC steps down memo, opts for more consultation. Stories on page 4. Passage shouldn't linger beyond July. That's according to TUC. Details of that story on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Daily Independent, Tinubu asks for more time to consult a national minimum wage. Labour says it expects negotiation on wage to end by July. Wants governors to brace up for uniform implementation. Details of that story continue on the inside pages of the paper. The Nigerian Observer has this one on governors. Southern governors throw weight behind Lagos-Calabar Road project. Support informed by economic benefits for Nigeria, according to Abiodun. Find the details of that story on the front page. It continues on the inside pages of the paper this morning. If you look at the Guardian newspaper, the angle is different. Poor states rack up debts, leave $335 billion minerals to illegal miners. And you find that infographic also very instructive right there on the front page. The story has its details on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on governors, Daily Trust. Northwest governors unite against insecurity. Exploring comparative advantage, our strength, according to Rada. We have what it takes to defeat bandits, according to Lawal. UNDP, others pledge continued support. That's the story right there on the front page. It continues on the inside pages of the paper. To other stories now, Business Day. Nigeria's gas export drops 25% on low output exits. Details of that story on the front page continues on the inside pages of the paper. Nigeria News Direct. Marketers accuse Dangote of selling dirty diesel. NMDPRA of attempted monopoly. As NMDPRA insists imported diesel meets regulatory standards. Page 5 has details of that particular story this morning. Blueprint newspaper, Ways and Means, Forex, pushed nation's debt to 121.67 trillion naira. That's from the Debt Management Office. FCT, 36 states domestic external debt inclusive. CBN seeks ends to excessive Forex volatility. Of course, at the bottom of the page, you also find that minimum wage story there. Tinubu to consult with governors, labor, private sector. Workers expect living wage from July, according to TUC. And those are some of the papers we have for you this morning.
Based on an agreement of 2009. I don't want to do the math. Let's just do it ourselves. And it's quite, some would say it's embarrassing that an agreement of 2009, we're still talking about it today in 2024. So I'm just wondering who is supposed to do what about these particular issues and why does it seem to be taking so long? I really don't know what to say about this, because what I would have expected is that at least there will be some way of reaching out to the ASU to at least find out how do we move forward from here. Sometimes it's not about resolving the issues, it's just about engagement, it's about communication, it's about seeking understanding, it's about collaboration, because at the end of the day, we are all in Nigeria, we understand what the issues are, and for these issues to be raised again with another threat of a strike in the next 2 weeks, if nothing is done, particularly at the federal government level, I think it's something that's embarrassing already. That's my take this morning, guys.
Well, I would like to highlight, I do not know whether all the online in-laws are still recovering from the wedding, the very famous wedding. I think it was tagged the billionaire's wedding that happened yesterday in Lagos between music artist David O, music star David O, and his wife, Chef Chioma, tagged Chivido. I don't know. Have you recovered from that? All you online in-laws. But while that also made the front page of the dailies this morning, as expected, one of the things that has been highlighted is the minimum wage issue. The minimum wage issue, you know, came out of the FEC meeting yesterday with the federal government saying, you know, there should be a little more time so the president can consult. But something that was not so highlighted, which also happened yesterday, is the FEC seeking to scrap or phase out the use of single-use plastics. And they want to start with themselves because it's something that they think is going to come up. No, they don't think. I think it's going to come up much later for maybe as a rule on behalf of the people of Nigeria, whereby single-use plastics will be banned, PET bottles, nylons, pure water sachets, etc., etc. But the Federal Executive Council would like to lead the way, and I think they're banning that in ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government. A few states have started taking some steps in that direction. We saw the Lagos state government ban styrofoam. The question for me is, what are we as individuals going to be doing about it? Even though it will be very curious to see how the federal government intends to implement that in a country where we still do not have pipe-borne water, you know, public drinkable water that, you know, people can actually, you know, drink without boiling. So it will be very interesting to see how the federal government implements that. But I think it's a challenge that we all can begin to take on to see how it is that we can reduce, as individuals, as families, our use of single-use plastics, and see how it is that we can find other alternatives. For instance, you really need to take that bottled water to work. Do your children have to take it to school? And water bottles, won't they do the job? These are big questions that we can ask ourselves and see how it is that we too can contribute to helping the environment. Chimberlin.
You know, that's a very interesting conversation because, I mean, of course, you know, for this kind of matters, you always have different schools of thoughts, and they also wonder which works best, which should we adopt, because many like to see the reasons behind some of these bans, as it usually is with a lot of things in this country. So yes, you see it on the front pages of the papers, but yeah, we know countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda all banned single-use plastics, but they were limited by black markets, smuggling. All of those issues pose a huge challenge, and so it's not been entirely off, you know, the environment. But some then recommend, I think they called it single-use tax. Maybe high taxes can let people just see why they should reduce it, and then it will just fizzle out like that.
The question, though, is what are the what are the alternatives for that? What are the alternatives? So, for instance, in schools, I mean, we've heard conversations about how people drank tap water in school. I drank tap water in my school. I do not know, my children cannot drink tap water today, sadly. That's the reality. But are there alternatives that can be explored, and what are the alternatives? I want to believe that if people realize the alternatives that are there, you know, then they will be, because people must drink water, wasn't they? So we must find ways. And then also, we used to have bottles in those days. A lot of drinks, carbonated drinks, which we consume these days, were actually done in glass bottles. But all of a sudden, it became convenient for even the companies to begin to use single-use PET bottles. So is there going to be an incentive or a disincentive for those people to go back to the use of bottles? And then nylons, which are everywhere now, sachet water. How is it going to affect people being able to, who are at that level, who resort to pure water, as the case might be, to get their portable water? What's going to happen to them? Those are very interesting scenarios because, I mean, even countries like Ireland, for instance, when they introduced those taxes, they saw a significant decrease in the use of those single-use plastics.
But, of course, you know, you have to have certain structures in place. I'm still trying to understand the reasons that these other people are giving. And did they consider those countries that banned it outrightly, lessons learned from them? Why did we go that way? So just trying to study to understand the thinking behind why we're adopting the measures that we are. Is government also taking a template from Lagos? Has it succeeded in Lagos? Is it completely out in Lagos? So those are the concerns. And studies talking about cancerous scenarios from consumption of products from those single-use plastics. And so research still out on that one anyway.
Well, Chamberlain, what I find very interesting is that the federal government is starting. I mean, they want to be the guinea pigs. So they're starting from their own meetings. They're starting from their ministries, departments, and agencies. However it is, maybe the lessons they learned there will help them see how they can implement it in the wider Nigeria. But lest I forget, also, let's quickly mention this. Happening today, media executives and, of course, members of the public will be gathering here in Abuja today at the Musa Yar'Adua Center at about 10 o'clock today for the launch of this book. It's called Writing for Media and Monetizing It, being launched by the editor-in-chief of the leadership newspapers, Azu Ishekwene. So quite a thing to see. I like the fact that one of the things I really love about this book, Chamberlain, and I have started reading it, is the fact that anyone can read it. Anyone can read it. Anyone. I mean, it makes sense if you're a student, if you're an aspiring writer, if you're a social media content creator, it's for everybody. As long as you have an interest in writing, this is for you. One of the things it doesn't mention on the front page is that it also has very wonderful interviews from the media greats. For instance, Dele Olojede, who is like the only Pulitzer Prize, well, he says he's not the only Pulitzer Prize winner that we know of, but there's an interview with him on how he started his trajectory. There's also one from Toasting, I'm trying to remember her surname now, who is like the youngest editor that had taken over overseeing a media house, so to speak. So very, very interesting interviews, really, really easy to digest, really, really easy to make sense of. And in this situation where people are looking to make an extra bit of money, it's also teaching you how to monetize your writing.
So the thing about that is, you know, when they talk about town meeting gown, immediately my mind just goes right away to institutions of learning where they teach media, mass communication, all of those. So they need to find a way to also see reasons, because people will pick up writing because it's gradually dropping, I must tell you, that culture. They will pick it up, a lot of younger folks, I reckon, will pick it up easier, probably faster, if they find a monetized reason why they should.
Yeah, it's an incentive.
There are theories that explain that, you know, so uses and classification.
Certainly.
And then they could also tell you, well, if you use this, this is the benefit you get from this, this is why we think you should use it. So as opposed to when they lump, I think some schools are breaking down the way they teach mass communication these days. It's no longer everything lumped together. So we need to let people pick up writing. There's nothing as good as writing.
Yeah, reading is one thing, writing is another thing. So I can tell you that.
It's not just for the sake of writing. You can make money out of writing.
Ayo, what's happening in Lagos with business?
Well, business, I'd have said, you know, one of the things to look at will be the business of writing, but you already talked about that, so let me not overflog it. Business news, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily is asking a question. Does Nigeria's increased debt pose a threat to economic reforms? Find the details at 10 a.m. this morning during Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. In the meantime, Chamberlain, we go into the issues for the day.
Yeah, so we'll do that when we come back in just a moment. Stay on with us.
Cube is available in beef, chicken, jollof, and shrimp flavors at attractive prices of 100, 200, 500 Naira, along with Saver and Super Saver packs.
Terra Cube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
future belongs to the dreamers, to the doers, to those who are not afraid of the side hustle. It's for those who are ready to turn their passion into something big. And to help keep you revitalized and inspired, Top Tea is with you every step of the way. You are made for more. Find your inspiration. Top Tea, big round bags of flavor.
For the second time in 2 months, officials of the Nigeria Labour Congress are storming the National Secretariat of the Labour Party to demand the immediate resignation of the national chairman of the party, Mr. Julius Abure. Security men are on ground to ensure that there is no breach of peace. The NLC members chant solidarity songs at the gate of the Secretariat as they did not have access to the premises. The attempts to force themselves into the premises were resisted by the police officers who were joined by some party supporters. The chaotic scene is immediately doused by the policemen using tear gas to disperse the protesters.
The tenure of Abure has expired by the 10th of this month, and there's no way we will allow vacuum. And the stakeholders unanimously decided to set up a national transition committee whose duty is only to conduct elections, congresses from the ward level to local government level to state levels, and it will culminate into a national convention that will be free, fair, and transparent.
However, the union leaders refused to leave the area. The presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, along with party officials and members, including Senator Iweti Kingibe, came to meet the NLC officials.
They shouldn't disperse them again. These people who are outside are members of the family who we must reconcile with. We must all sit down at the table and decide the future of our family. And that's what we are doing.
From what we have witnessed today, it appears certainly it is either we find our way forward or we make our way forward. This I assure you.
Mr. Peter Obi was at the Secretariat to meet with the National Working Committee of the party. The union leaders are hoping that the necessary steps will be taken to address the crisis for the party to stay focused on the forthcoming governorship elections in Edo and Ondo states, as well as the 2027 general elections.
Okay, so there you go. Welcome back. So yes, those are some of the issues that we'll talk about this morning. We've got Mr. Abdul Wahid Omar here with us. He is the chairman of the National Transition Committee. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
We had to change from acting to chairman.
Yes.
Why not acting? Why chairman?
No, the whole transition committee is in acting capacity because it will only carry out the duties of conducting elections from ward level to local government to states, and then it will now come down to conducting a national convention of the party where national officers will be elected and will hand over when we are done.
Okay, but tactically it's not correct. It's not wrong. So chairman acting, but you prefer chairman.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The last time people saw you was when you were president of NLC. So yes. I said, oh, Comrade is back on the beat now, in the manner of speaking.
Yeah.
What have you been up to ever since then, though?
Well, basically, I've been in retirement, but I do some little farming.
So are you out of retirement now with this?
Well, it is a call to duty, so I had to respond.
But how do you feel? Because I do remember in 2012, at some point, there was at a point when you were trying to call a strike over, you were insisting that government needed to implement the fuel subsidy report. Today, we know, fuel subsidy is gone. And at the same breath, too, you were also talking about the poor implementation of the minimum wage, which issues that I was still grappling with today. At that time, it was 18,000 Naira.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts now, looking at how we're dealing with fuel subsidy and minimum wage?
Well, I think my thoughts are that government, in the first instance, I think I must have to say, made a serious mistake in rushing into removing the fuel subsidy. Perhaps what government did not understand was that they too will be affected, and everything will be affected. And therefore, it is not just impacting on workers, it is going to impact on every sector of the economy.
But for minimum wage, I know that government says, look, we're going to consult. OPS, some of them are insisting on 60, 62. FG say we're going to consult with governors. Governors have said, look, we can't pay anything beyond maybe in the realm of 60. Even that 60, 62, so I'm saying no, it's not possible. What do you see happening? Because we don't see government meeting labor's actual demands.
Well, I wish to see some increased transparency in governance. That is all I need to say.
How do you mean specifically?
If people in government are sincere, they know that it is not a difficult thing to pay much higher than the 62,000 Naira they are proposing. But if you go deep into checking what is happening in government, you discover that even frivolous things are being paid for and nobody complains. And cost of governance itself is so high in Nigeria that if we bring it to size, it is going to help so much into paying all these salaries to workers.
But Comrade, some of the arguments that some people have told us here is that, yes, they understand inflationary figures, double digits, challenging for everybody, but I think they call it wage, we're confusing wage, salary, we're putting everything in one sweep. And they say, look, that may not necessarily be the way we ought to go. That the argument of OPS is that if you insist on, even if it's 100 or 150 or 200,000 Naira, several people, private sector, cannot pay that as minimum.
You see, that's also about the deceit. Now, with the removal of minimum wage, go and check in the market. The private sector, what they do is to sell their goods and services. And the cost or the prices are not as they were before the removal of fuel subsidy. So why should anybody complain? Yes.
Well, you haven't quite addressed the question that Chimling is raising, which is about, and I know that's not the tricky one. Yeah, that's not the conversation we want to have, but we can always add it to it, which is about the fact that salaries and wages, and they don't mean the same thing.
They don't mean the same thing.
You agree that they don't mean the same thing?
No, I agree they don't mean the same thing because, of course, wages normally are not paid, necessarily paid on a monthly basis and so on. And also there are other things that are attracted by salaries, which are not attracted by wages and so on. But you just put them together to mean the same thing, to mean that, look, whatever any worker, the minimum any worker should earn within a given period, say a month, should not be less than this. That's the meaning of minimum wage.
So the reason why people have said that is what is causing the confusion, not just confusion now, but it causes the conflict every time we're about to review a minimum wage, is that when we think about wages, we confuse it with salary, or we lump them up with salaries, and as such, increasing the minimum wage always has an effect, a spiral effect on salaries, which always makes it very difficult for governments to be able to pay.
Okay, maybe in Nigeria, the way we operate here, the vast majority of people who earn living through payments by employers as salaries. So even if you remove the word wages, I will be very comfortable.
Will it not be
minimum salary?
Yeah.
Because majority of the people is salary they take, not wages.
Will it not be better for us to actually, and for even the people, because the idea is that we seek to protect the most vulnerable of people. There's people at the very bottom of the ladder, blue-collar workers. Will it not make more sense for us to see how we can go back to the wages format in which our people can earn hourly, and then people can recommend or seek their services on an hourly basis? They work somewhere, put in so many hours. When they're done, they find other jobs. Wouldn't that also have an effect on productivity?
I think that is good also. But even then, you must have to also be talking about minimum. Even in other countries where they earn wages based on hourly inputs, they are always calculated with minimum and maximum.
Yes, of course. I mean, I've never heard of maximum. People can earn as much as they want to earn.
Of course, yes. The minimum is always the bottom line.
Yes. The question is, why is it so difficult for us to have that conversation from that perspective?
Yeah, but perhaps it should be for another day. But we are now talking about the minimum a worker should earn within a month. And it doesn't just come up out of the blues. It is a result of analysis, careful analysis. What is the minimum somebody with a wife and 2 or 3 kids can use to maybe for a period of 1 month? A bag of rice now, even maize, is about 75,000 now.
Yeah, but comrade, the point is that, I mean, yes, that's a stark reality that we're faced with, but to address that, that's why the question Mark was talking about why don't Labour take a look at it from that perspective on an hourly basis? If we make that point and then we implement it, you have people who are moonlighting, I mean, doing certain other jobs, and then you're getting more income from separate other places as opposed to waiting for one.
I agree, but perhaps that has to do with the whole of the policy of government. But I believe
but Labour can make a point.
It is even going to be better for the workers.
So why is Labour not championing that?
Because it is not in place. If government introduces that, of course, it is going to be acceptable by Labour.
So would there be anything wrong if Labour were to make that point? Because since 2012, you were arguing about poor implementation of 18,000 Naira.
Yes.
States were not even implementing.
Naira, yes.
And now, states are even struggling, according to them, to pay 30,000. So many states never pay this so-called minimum wage, even when Labour agrees on something.
Well, as I told you earlier, it's just deceit in most cases. I'm telling you that because it is workers that gets the analysis of the income and expenditure of government. So it will not be a surprising thing for us to know that certainly there is enough money to be able to pay minimum wage to Nigerian workers and also do other things.
I hear you, comrade, but I think the overarching point which we tend to hear now is Labour appears to be doing the same thing, the same style, the same argument, but they want a different result.
No, but not a different result. What we are arguing is about paying somebody the minimum that can take him through a month. It's not a different argument.
Yeah, but the reality is, if you're looking for people, companies who can pay that amount that Labour is asking, the private sector folks are saying, this cannot happen. Because if you now make it a national, it means everyone must comply. They'll tell you to achieve that, they have to retrench, which is not what Labour is asking for.
No, it's not what we're asking for. We strongly believe that this is doable. When you put the things in the right perspective, they are doable. And this issue you are talking about wages, of course, it will be better for Nigerian workers because if I work for you in the channels here, maybe you give me 5 hours and you say you'll be paying me 5,000 Naira or 2,000 Naira per hour. When I put in my 5 hours, I know I will be free. I can now go to Dangote Sugar or Dangote Cement and do 1 or 2 more hours.
Yeah, but
where you tie somebody down.
I don't remember Labour talking to organized private sector, asking folks, can this work or not? I don't remember that, if Labour does that.
Well, maybe it is time now that they do that.
All right. So let's get to this other part, the Labour Party. Because, I mean, that report which you showed, you led the team who went in there trying to say, Mr. Abure, your time is up. Even though Mr. Abure himself, from the narratives, we tried to get across to his team, but they didn't oblige us. But the arguments which is out there is that, contrary to what you are asking, they think we've just been re-elected. So why should we go?
That's from their own point of view. But from the point of view of we, the Labour Party, and also Nigerians and the law, Abure and his group, I will not say they are in power now. Their tenure had expired effectively by any standard on the 10th of June, 2024. And that's why we did not go there to ask him to resign. In fact, we did not even envisage what happened there. We went there peacefully, thinking that because we had sent him letters that your time is up, and we had even been introduced to INEC, that effectively the leadership had changed. So we are waiting for the response of INEC. And we also have
when was this communication to INEC?
I think 2 weeks ago. And what we expected that we would go in there, perhaps if Abure was there to welcome us and say, okay, you are welcome. But on the contrary, what we met there was something else. They gathered talks, and they filled the place before we arrived.
Who gathered talks?
Yes, Abure and his people gathered talks, and before we arrived, by the time we arrived there, they clogged the gates, and they didn't want us to go in. Well, something we thought was going to be a peaceful transition turned out to be what it became. But it's okay. We are always law-abiding people, and we want to make sure that we do it in the best way possible, in the best civil way possible, so that no casualties will be.
There seems to be a major division. We saw the presidential candidate, Mr. Peter, be there, and you all spoke. But how about Dr. Alex Oti of Labour Party? He seems to have given Mr. Abure a vote of confidence, saying that they are going to secure, or whatever happens should go through Mr. Abure. Is that right?
No, I have not heard that. I have not heard that from the governor. He said something like that.
That's what we read.
Through Abure.
I communicate.
I don't think that emanated from him.
But are you in touch with him? Is everybody on the same page?
Yeah, what we try to do is to keep all those people in government at bay. That's why we are not even, for now, maybe held any meeting with anybody elected in the political office. Because what we thought was going to be a very smooth transition has now turned out to be violence. And if we had reacted, I think it would have been something different. But we try to keep our calm, because the issue is Abure and his people. This election they are talking about. Let me just tell you exactly what happened. Back in 2022, Abure was never elected into the office of chairman of the Labour Party.
But he was a member of Labour Party.
He was a member of Labour Party. In fact, he was an acting secretary. And he became a secretary. And then when there was a convention and a chairman was elected, after 2 years, there was the demise of that chairman. And it was after his demise that he now worked his way through pleadings and so on, rather than even following the constitution of Labour Party for the deputy to take over, or any of the vice chairmen. As a secretary, he now took over as the chairman. Well, I think he was tolerated by the people then, and then he pleaded also that he should be allowed to complete the tenure of the deceased chairman, which was given to him. But later, when the time was up, Abure didn't want to go. And it was the same pleading that even they went to the National Executive Council and now said, okay, we're extending your tenure by 1 year. Okay, when 1 year now ended, he didn't want to go. When NLC, because NLC is a major stakeholder, and in fact, by the consent judgment of 2018, the judge recognized NLC as the owner of the Labour Party. In fact, right now, the certificate, the original certificate of Labour Party is in the custody of Nigeria Labour Congress.
But they're two different things. Yes.
I agree. But NLC, because NLC does not operate directly with the Labour Party or any political party, they have what is called National Political Commission. Whatever NLC wants will be communicated to the commission, and it is the commission that will, have interaction with parties.
Has the commission said anything now?
Yes, it is through the National Commission that has championed. It is the National Commission that championed the coming together of all the major stakeholders of Labour Party, and a summit was held where it was resolved that the National Transition Committee should be put in place with the sole purpose of effecting very good registration system in the party from the grassroots to the national level, and then conducting congresses at the local government, at the ward level, to the local government level, to the states, and then it will now come to culminate to the National Convention where national leaders will be elected and will now hand over. And this is what Abure and his group have been avoiding. Like I was saying, in 2018, there was this judgment because the two parties were in court, but they are now decided to withdraw their cases and agreed on a pattern.
2018?
2018.
Which two parties?
That is the Abure faction, and that time with even the late chairman and other people. And on the other hand, NLC and other groups. Now it was when they agreed that we are now forgetting our differences, we'll chart a way forward. The judge now committed that to judgment and said clearly that they will now come together to do an all-inclusive and expansive national convention.
So only recently, congresses were conducted, led by the chairman, Abure, whom you say his tenure has expired.
Congresses where? That is the question. Congresses were conducted where?
You are not aware of the congresses that were conducted?
There were no congresses at the ward level. There were no congresses at the local government level. There were no congresses at the state level.
So who were those so-called delegates that he said are friendly?
That is the question. In fact, you see, national delegates conference, I mean the convention, National Convention of Labour Party at least, is a huge gathering because you have designated members or participants apart from delegates. And if you check, even the National Executive Council, there are about 119. All of them are members. And if you have all the sitting governors, senators, their deputies, state assembly members, and so on, all of these are supposed to be members or participants at the National Convention. And when you come, all the state executive councils, and each state executive council is at least 33 people. And then all the local government chairmen and secretaries. If you put these ones, there are about 1,300 people. These are all supposed to be members or participants in the National Convention of the party, and also delegates. Now the NEC will determine the number of delegates. Assuming the NEC will say, okay, we don't have money, we'll have only 3. Then you also have 3 times 774. 3 times 36 plus 1. All these are supposed to be participants in the convention of the party. But where this convention, purported convention, took place in Newi, I think was a small hall that could not carry more than 250 people.
So what I am very interested in is that, you know, from all of the political shenanigans that have been going on within the Labour Party, some people are just saying, look, we thought this party by now would be getting its act together. Looking at the outing that it had in the last presidential election, it was a really great outing, an outing that took the country by storm. It was unprecedented, and they nearly succeeded. As a matter of fact, it's still a matter of controversy as to whether or not they succeeded or not because of, you know, what happened with INEC. But that was just how close the Labour Party was to, you know, to making a statement in the country. Are you willing to throw it away, you know, based on what is currently happening within the political party?
Well, in the first place, let me tell you, of course, yes, Labour Party fared very, very well. But it ought to have fared much better if the level playing ground was given. I was just telling you about participants in the convention. Now, there is also among the stakeholder groups, because all the stakeholder groups came together. Among them is also Governorship Candidates Forum. These are aggrieved people, very many of them, because of the way things were manipulated and so on. I don't want to go into even issues of criminality because they are before the courts now, where the forgeries were involved and so on. So genuine candidates were denied the right to go into contest simply because maybe there was a hand or something. But this is what we are trying to address. I bet you if Labour Party had the right leadership and they did the correct thing, it's not just about, if you notice, and this is one thing also we are going to battle very seriously, to ensure that, to tell Nigerians that the Labour Party is not a sectional party, it's not a religious party, it's a national party. But you have to do a lot in some other places to disabuse people's minds that no, it is not what you are thinking. It's a party, and people have been yearning to come, people have been approaching us and so on. This is what Abore and his group are not ready to do.
Ayo.
One is just wondering, one is just wondering in what way, manner, shape, or form does this help political mentoring for them? I'm asking this question because given the number of young people that came out and supported massively and openly, supported the candidate of your party, and the reactions that have trailed that up until this very moment, one wonders, seeing what is happening in the Labour Party and the issues that you have also raised, how this leads to any learning from them. How does the Labour Party differ from any other political party that the young people are trying to run away from?
Well, in the first place, I beg to disagree that young people are running away from Labour Party.
Said that the Labour Party is the party that they are going to, running away from other political parties.
Oh, yeah, you are very correct. And that is what we are trying to effect. We are trying to make sure that Labour Party belongs to everybody. And therefore, the youth also are very important. We would mobilize them. And they are coming, they keep trooping. But unfortunately, because of the leadership style of Abure and his people, for whatever reason, what they are after perhaps is not what the party is after. Because every party will strive to expand its territories, will try to make sure that maybe it gets to power, and will try to therefore make sure they implement, those elected will implement their manifesto. But this is not what is happening with Abure and his group. And well, in any case, we have come to the point where there's no going back.
You know, Comrade, still on the same issue, but perhaps from a different perspective, if you will. Now, how is the Labour Party different from other political parties when the same issues that other political parties have, the Labour Party is also having?
Well, in the first place, political parties are differentiated mainly and majorly by their manifestos. You know that Labour Party is a social democratic setting, and the focus is on people and serving the people. Perhaps maybe that's the major difference between Labour Party and other parties. We don't have to maybe have a presidential candidate before we say, okay, he will think about what his own agenda. Already, it's a social democratic setting. Any presidential candidate or any candidate at whatever level will have to conform with those social democratic ideals of the party. That is the major difference. You will discover in other parties, perhaps it is the presidential candidate who will decide what will be his agenda, and that is how he will implement it. But in Labour Party, we will make sure that if you are coming in the first place, we have to be sure that it's a credible candidate, and then you also have to abide by the provisions of our manifesto, that it is within the manifestos that you will be able to carve out your own agenda.
You know, there are those who also believe, Comrade, that the candidate, the presidential candidate of your party, was only using the platform just to advance a particular cause, and that at any point he may decide to jettison the Labour Party because at least now there is some significant popularity. If that should happen, there are those who also believe that with that happening, the popularity and the prominence of the Labour Party will dip massively. How do you respond to that?
Well, I appreciate the fact that the leader of the party has really brought in a lot of followership in the party. But at the same time, I do not also envisage that he will abandon the party all of a sudden. But in case he even does, which I don't hope he will, in case he does, that is his own personal belief. Nobody has anything to do with that. But I assure you, the way we are going to operate is openly, is going to attract many more followers to the party. No doubt about that.
You don't think that the withdrawal of Mr. Peter Obi from the Labour Party will affect the fortunes of the party?
No, I said yes, of course. He's a man of integrity and he's a man of massive followership. But as I said, if in case he does, which I hope he will not, but we will still forge ahead. A Labour Party, perhaps like, if I borrow his own statement on issue of obedience, Labour Party is beyond any individual because it is the only institutional organization. That's the only organization that is owned and manned by institutions, rather than just other political parties where it is an all-comer thing. That people will join some parties simply because maybe either they had lost elections elsewhere or they are not given the opportunity to participate or to run for election. But strictly speaking, Labour Party is guided by its own ideology.
You know, going forward, what's the relationship between the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Labour Party? There are those, particularly members of the Labour Party, who had hitherto said that the NLC should maintain its space as an advocacy organization while the Labour Party maintains its status as a political party. What's the relationship between the Labour Party and the NLC going forward?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, Nigeria Labour Congress is an entity for Nigerian workers. It does not also relate directly with any political party, not even the Labour Party, though it is the Nigeria Labour Congress that established the Labour Party, registered the Labour Party. The relationship is that when it comes to the Labour Party, then Nigeria Labour Congress is just a stakeholder. And because it does not relate directly to Labour political parties, it now set up what is called National Political Commission of Nigeria Labour Congress. So whatever NLC will do, or any message or whatever NLC will want to see from the Labour Party, it passes it through the National Political Commission. So, and that is, even in this instance, it is the Political Commission that championed the convening of the stakeholder summit that came together to say, okay, all of us are aggrieved. We know that this man's tenure has ended. He doesn't want to go. We have done everything for him to go, including even the agreement or the settlement that was brokered by the Independent National Electoral Commission. That, okay, go and come together to conduct national convention. But Abure also circumvented that. And
okay, so just quick one before we go. Why is it that, because the position of the national chairman reserved for Labour Party and TUC, according to your constitution, is that not the case?
No, it's not the case.
What's the case?
The case is that NLC and TUC have designated membership of the, what do you call, not the National Executive Council. If they are to go into the National Executive Council, they have to be now assigned. But they are designated members of the Board of Trustees.
All right.
Not...
okay. All right, Comrade Abdulwahid Omar is the chairman, National Transition Committee of NLC, trying to get the Labour Party back in order. Thank you for coming on, and we wish that your party succeeds in
Thank you very much.
Whatever it is that they want to succeed with. Business Morning on Sunrise, it is up next with Inijon Mekwa.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Yes, we'll do business for just about 30 minutes, beginning from the global oil space. Prices inched up during Asian trade on Wednesday, and that's despite surprise jump in the United States stockpiles driven by geopolitical risks. That is heightening at this time from the Middle East, the conflicts and forecast of an eventual inventory drawdown during the third quarter peak demand season. Looking at the numbers, very huge movements, almost 0.5% for each of them, if we could have that number right there. So we see Brent up 0.48%. Meanwhile, since we've seen that jump, a huge one, 0.48% to $85.42. WTI even more, 0.57% up at $81.29. You know that the market is up to something when you see both Brent and WTI in their 80s. But that's what's happening there. And we said earlier that is obviously driven by that very increasing geopolitical risk with Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. Yes, the Red Sea is back in the news, and mounting Israel-Hezbollah hostilities in Lebanon. They are bullish for oil, and we've seen that driving oil prices at this time. Now let's come back to Nigeria, see what's happening there with the Naira. Not good at all, not good at all. I guess we relaxed a bit thinking that we had hit a kind of 70 when it comes to the value of the Naira, because we've been seeing about 1,008 for 3 weeks now. Well, unfortunately, yesterday by the close of trade, the Naira dropped, lost 0.71%. You can see getting close to a whole 1%. And then for NAFEM, is 0.31%. So it closed at 1,579. Can only imagine what's going on in the parallel market at this time. Open at 1,490, while for NAFEX, it's 1,492 Naira 71 kobo after it opened at 1,488 Naira. Will this attract the CBI? I know we're saying yesterday how for about 3 weeks now we've not got intervention from the central bank into the market, both in official or the BDCs. Will this attract them? We'll be watching to see, even though we did get that assurance from Mr. Cardoso, the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, yesterday also, that the Naira is stabilizing and things are going to be well. Well, we'll see what the numbers tell us at the close of trade today. Now, reactions are still trailing the 24.99% increase in Nigeria's public debt. We had that some days ago. In response, the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Mrs. Patience Oniha, said that the rise in Nigeria's public debt stock is partly due to new borrowing, which we know, we talk about it almost every day, as well as ways and means that was securitized. You know, so figures from the DMO indicates that for the first quarter of 2024, public debt stood at 121.67 trillion Naira, and that shows an increase of 24.33 trillion Naira from 97.34 trillion Naira that was reported in December 2023. All the contributors, according to Mrs. Oniha, are interest rate as well as new borrowing. And of course, we know the value of the dollar also contributes to that. But we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. First of all, let's hear what the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, is also saying about this. Seems Nigerians are getting worried again about the issue of debt and the level of debt. So he says that there's a positive balance despite outstanding debt. He was speaking after the week's Federal Executive Council meeting, which took place in the presidential villa in Abuja. The minister says that the federal government does not rely on ways and means in order to fund itself and also reducing its debt burden.
The total debt stock of Nigeria in US dollar terms fell by 15%. That is very positive. We are focused on ensuring that the revenue that is due to the federal government is collected robustly, using technology, avoiding blockages which manual processing can cause. And it has led to a very robust revenue effort. We do not rely on ways and means to pay salaries. We don't rely on it to pay debt service, external debt servicing, or other obligations. That is the situation. The finances of Nigeria have been revamped. The glass is half full.
So the glass is half full, not half empty. I guess some assurances coming from the manager there, the coordinator of the economy, so is the manager of our economy, coordinating other aspects of it. We're going to have a conversation on this. But first of all, let's have that slide showing status at this time, talking about the public debts. If we could have that, looking at the level that it's the last time it was reduced. Yeah, that's this one. So we have our public debts at this time, a total of 121.67 trillion Naira. And, well, the worry is that by December, it was at 97.34 trillion Naira by fourth quarter of 2023. That's by December. So you see the jump there of about 25%. That's why, you know, eyes are going back in the external at 56. And then domestic at 67. You know, even this week, there was a Eurobond auction at the fixed income market. So, and we've seen a very active fixed income market in this administration since last year. I think, no, from this year, we've seen a whole lot of fund raised from there. So that makes up a huge part of this domestic. Then the states. Lagos State has the highest commercial capital. I guess they are most active. And some people would say, well, it's not about the borrowing, it's about what it's being used for. If it's being used to boost economic activities, then it will take care of the debt at the end of the day. So we've had Lagos with the highest of about 929.41 billion naira. And then the state with the lowest is Jigawa with 2.07 billion naira. Obviously, there are some states in between. Delta is one of second highest when you look at following Lagos right there. So there you have it. Let's take a short break. When we come back. Oh, okay, all right. Before we go on that break, we have Professor of Managerial Economics, Professor Emmanuel Abolo, to help us dissect these numbers and tell us some of the implications. Professor Abolo, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
Great.
To dissect this.
Yeah, so we see the numbers, and we know the worry. The worry is that from December to now, Nigeria's public debt has gone from 97.3 to 121.6. And the DMO has come to explain that, of course, there are new borrowings, and then we know there was the securitization of the ways and means. And then we also had the minister also telling us that, well, we should look at the glass as half full, not half empty. What do you see? Half empty, half full?
Thank you very much for that brilliant question. Yeah, the coordinating minister has provided some clarity to say that Nigeria's public debt, fell from $108 billion as of December 2023 to 91 billion as at March. Let me be very clear. I think the minister ought to explain that very clearly, to say that this is due to exchange rate fundamentals. The value of the Naira had depreciated so massively, and therefore the so-called fall in debt in dollar terms is neither here nor there. You need to account for the exchange rate fundamentals. Currently, the exchange rate is at about 1,400, 500 Naira to a dollar. Compare that to December. So it's very clear. Let's not play with figures. There is no significant decline in terms of external debt, in terms of public debt in dollar terms. Now, explanations can be provided by the DMO. The coordinating minister can provide explanation. Even the central bank itself can provide explanation. But looking at these figures, you will see clearly that the burden, the value, the amount of debt generally, it's very, very significant, and it's very, very worrisome. It's very, very worrisome. And I think it is time to begin to interrogate, the implications of this huge debt. I think that should be the focus here. So any explanation can be provided. The point is, these debts are just too high for this economy. That's the truth, period. Now, what are the implications? Maybe I should leave that to you to begin to ask the question, but I've interrogated the numbers to say that these are huge. And of course, the DMO has
maybe you should give us the implications, Prof. Maybe you should just go ahead and say the implications.
Okay. Before the implication, let me be very clear. DMO, the central bank governor, they will explain that we are still within normal limits, whatever that means. That yes, the figures are 108 billion, that we are still within limits in terms of the debt GDP ratio. But you see, when you run a country, you are not looking at the upper threshold. The upper threshold. So if the international institutions, international community says that the debt GDP ratio should be 200 billion, and now you are at 108 billion, so you beat your chest that you are still within normal limits. And I think that is a very, very weak argument, very, very weak argument. So let's try to interrogate some of the implications of what we are putting ourselves in this country. We're in an abyss when it comes to this issue of public debt. We're in an abyss. One of the implications is the fiscal strain this excessive debt is going to put Nigeria into. We look at the servicing cost. It's been reported, and the figures are there. You will find that the servicing cost of these debts is even outpacing the total revenue of government. So you have a huge budget and fiscal deficits. So that is going to put fiscal strain on government, fiscal strain on Nigeria. Then, of course, the huge debt is also going to crowd out. It's going to crowd out public investment in critical areas of the economy. And that is going to slow down economic growth and development. In terms of currency and inflation, we can also mention that the high debt can lead to serious currency depreciation. That's what we witness. But of course, we say we should thank the central bank that there has been some stability, but that exchange rate, 1,500 naira to a dollar, that is extremely very high for this country. So there are going to be currency risk because part of the component, a major part of the component of the debt is the external debt. Let's look at that. You see, when there is exchange rate volatility, you are going to be facing currency risk. So they need to explain to us how they are going to mitigate that currency risk. So when you begin to have excessive external borrowing, of course, someone had argued that in terms of moratorium, in terms of the cost of borrowing and all of that, and the issues of tenor of external borrowing, that seem to be good. But I think that is a very weak argument. There are serious currency risk issues, and government needs to explain how that is going to be handled. What about vulnerability to the external sector? When you borrow externally, you are subject to external sector vulnerabilities, and we need to have the right, the right framework to be able to handle, issues of external debt vulnerability.
Yeah, so, Prof, let me just come in there, Prof, and look at the domestic. We've seen the government, I believe, is intentionally looking inwards. So it's more of domestic debts. At least for the first 6 months of the year, we've seen the fixed income market really busy. Doesn't that give us a little bit of relief, saying that debt servicing, instead of, going with the dollar, which we see at some point really strengthened, doesn't that reduce our debt servicing and also give us a little bit of reprieve as Nigeria?
Are we looking at the unintended consequences? So even when you are borrowing domestically, you're saying you are borrowing in Naira. You are going to use this money to fund, according to you, to fund infrastructure. Now, what are the components? What are the elements? Those infrastructure, you are going to import them. You are going to import the materials. You are going to import the iron, import so many things. So even when it is
I think we do have a network fluctuation right there with Professor Emmanuel Aboli was going to tell us that even though we can, maybe it's a bit of relief to say it's domestic borrowing, so it doesn't, the servicing of that debt does not increase as the value of the dollar strengthens, but we still do have some prizes or disadvantages also borrowing at all. But I mean, a lot of economists would actually say that borrowing isn't bad in and of itself, but what are you using the borrowing or the loan for? If it's being used to boost economic activities, then, it might as well be a positive thing. I don't know if we have the Prof back now. Professor Abolo. Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, I wonder if we'll be able to conclude that conversation. But this is obviously an ongoing conversation in Nigeria, the issue of debt and the movement between the fourth quarter of 2023, that's at December, where we had it at 97.34 to more than 121 trillion naira in January, a source of worry. Prof, are you back? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back. Apologies for that.
Yeah. So you were going to explain some of the implications of even the domestic debts, which we think will cost the government less. But you say it has other consequences.
Yes, macroeconomic fundamentals, they interact. They interact. There's no way you are going to isolate them. Everything is connected. Everything is, so you are discussing this within a systemic framework. Everything is connected. So let's not deceive ourselves by saying, yes, we are focusing more on domestic debt. But the question is, how are you, the domestic debt, which is in Naira, you are going to also import items in order for this infrastructure development and so on. So there's no way you are going to escape from the exchange rate implications and the exchange rate impact on domestic debt. But I think it's very important to just stress, we should stop borrowing. We should stop borrowing. Let's not try to be explaining and putting things here and there to explain. Let's stop borrowing for now, at least for 6 months. The country will not collapse. Excessive borrowing since 2017 or so, if you look at the figures, the trajectory and the trend is worrisome. Can we just stop? Now, other implications of these huge debts, whether domestic or whether external, you put all of them together, they're into one bucket. You're going to constrain, the government is going to constrain itself in terms of policy articulation and policy management. What do we mean here? When you have very high public debt, you are going to limit your ability to use fiscal policy to stimulate the economy. Because there are two main types of policy. You have the monetary policy and then the fiscal policy. Studies have shown that when you have huge external debt, you are going to constrain yourself, when it comes to the fiscal space.
But Prof, Prof,
yes.
let me ask, when you say the government should stop borrowing, but the government does need funds to run the country, pay salaries and, take up projects, where should the funding come from? Except you're asking taxes, obviously, which is the next source of revenue, should be increased.
I hear you. You're talking about borrowing to pay salaries. That is the worrisome aspect. So people
but it's our reality for now. It is our reality for now.
Yes, it is a reality. When you have an emergency situation, you take emergency actions. Now, let me also mention very clearly, we have always argued very forcefully that we should reduce the cost of governance. We should reduce the cost of governance. So if you look at what is happening recently, people have alluded to that. If you look at the actions, I won't say the actions of government in terms of the types of funding, expenditure on certain items, and you now match that against what is happening to the people of this country, people are beginning to ask, must you borrow money to do all of these things? And their transparency, issue of transparency in governance is very important. If you say you borrowed 100 billion, can you show us the benefits of this amount that you have? Can we be transparent? Tell us, let us see the benefits in concrete terms that is verifiable. That is the issue. But I was just mentioning the issue of cost of governance. Let us reduce the cost of governance. Oransoye report, is nowhere to be found after several decades. Can we reduce the cost of governance? Must we really borrow? If we don't borrow in 6 months' time, are we going to really die? And the answer is no. So let us rethink. Let us step back and rethink the model and say, yes, how do we better approach this issue?
All right,
we talked about revenue diversification. We've talked about diversifying the productive base of this country. Since 1986, during the Babangida era, we talked about diversification of revenue. What are we doing here? We're just focusing just on oil and gas and all of that, and then borrowing. So for how long are we going to be borrowing? We are going to ultimately compromise our sovereignty when we expose ourselves to excessive borrowing. Investor confidence is going to be affected.
All right,
These are realities.
All right, yes. Prof, we really have to stop it there. Thank you so much. Nigeria should stop borrowing at least for 6 months. I think that's one clear message, you're sending this morning, Professor Emmanuel Abolo,
Yes, it's my
Professor of Managerial Economics. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we head to the market just before we head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios. And just in case you missed the stock market report yesterday, we'll give you a bit of closing numbers from yesterday's markets in Nigeria. The all-share index is still in the red at the close of trade. It dropped 0.09%. And the equities cap is still struggling with 56 trillion naira. Really close right there. If we have another negative today, most likely we will head back to 55 trillion naira because yesterday 49 billion naira was shaved off the market. Imagine if that happens again today, then we'll have a 55 trillion naira market cap for the country. Activity, we see it was all red yesterday. Deals that we had so much hope on had dropped from 9,000, almost 10,000 to 8,500. Value down as well as volume at the close of the sectors. Banking is still in the red, consumer goods red, industrial goods red, insurance. The penny stocks that were up the day before closed in the negative yesterday, and oil and gas back to its, well, certain stage. Top gainers yesterday, Como came out of nowhere and did some margin, gained 10% at the close of trade yesterday. John Holt also did so well, 9.79, as well as Conho PLC. Top losers, Owen Dole. What was going on? All this conversation about crude, you know, that we had yesterday, is not affecting the oil and gas or expectations from Dangote, the PMS that is expected from Dangote from next month. Is that also a part of it? I wonder. It would be good to delve into that one of these days. Stop trades, Transco, GTCO, and Veriscap also. Now, looking at the fixed income, Treasury bills market, secondary market yesterday recorded a calm session, bullish undertone, pockets of demand on the long-term end with emphasis on June 17, 2025. OMO at the close of trade. The maturities, a handful of trades were also consummated at the 22%, 20.22% level. So you want to imagine why the NGX seems to be, you know, getting less attention at this time. You just look at the rates at the fixed income market. By the close of trade, average closing rate increased by 63 basis points because of sell-offs on 270-day papers by some market participants at 21%. It's expected to continue again today. Let's have Bosun Obembe now join us to give us some perspective to this. Good morning, Mr. Obembe. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So it was quiet yesterday after the whole movement on June, on the 24th. That was on Monday, that auction. But it seems the market has gone back to a lull at this time.
Yeah, so what we see in the market is, you know, the market is driven by liquidity. So the system liquidity is over 900 billion. So what we've seen is we've seen a lot of interest from investor trying to like pick up some of these fixed income instrument at this higher level. Today, there's an NTB auction going on. We have about 128 billion across the standard tenor. So we have 29.8 billion on the 91, 30.6 on the 181 papers, and the 364 paper we have 168. So given the system liquidity, we expect that there will be oversubscription at this auction. We expect the stop rate to still remain relatively similar to what we saw at the previous auction. On the long end, which is the 1 year paper, we expect that the rate will close almost the same, maybe 20.5.
Wow.
Demand.
Okay, thank God. Yeah. So, Mr. Bembe, help us to tie. We were talking about debt just before you came on, and we see domestic, the government seems to be embracing, domestic borrowing. Help us tie that with the market at this time, especially, sometimes it seems the numbers, when we have economic conversations, they are standing on their own. So help us to understand the tie back between these numbers and activities in the Treasury bond and Treasury bonds and OMO to the issue of debt.
Okay, so for the debts, if you see the publication from the DMO, it was driven by the securitization of the ways and means. So if you notice in the first quarter, there were a lot of when we have this kind of auction, DMO was selling over 1 trillion. But I don't expect that to happen at the bond auction on Monday. There was an under subscription, so DMO was willing to do about 450 billion. They were able to just raise less than 300 billion, so which we expect that they might cover from today's auction. So borrowing is you need to actually borrow to finance your debt. Wow. In the interim, I believe, given the increase that we've seen from the foreign from the FX rate from reserve, and some of the cheap loans that the government has been able to secure from the World Bank, I think the domestic borrowing will start coming down. The issue that we should be thinking about is the debt service, because the rate at which this instrument were issued is quite high. So, and when you are looking at in the next 1 year, when some of these instruments start maturing, the government has to repay. So I think borrowing is normal. So that's what I would say.
But Mr. Bembe, please, just briefly, but when you compare the debt servicing for this domestic to if it was international borrowing, it's still lower, yes, for the servicing?
Yes, it is, because, when you look at the foreign borrowing, if you are not earning so much foreign exchange, and you are borrowed in foreign currency, so by the time maybe there's a depreciation, then that means you have to pay more. So, if you borrow domestic, you cannot. You are the one printing. You can still print, unlike the foreign borrowing where you cannot print the dollar. So let's say you're borrowing in a foreign currency, so you have to actually look for that money to actually repay. But if it's domestic borrowing, you can still find a way to restructure it, or you can work with the CBN to actually find a way that you don't default. So I think borrowing is something that is used to stimulate the economy. It's just borrowing for something that will be very productive, which I think the government has been doing.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bossobebe, for your time. Fix the com dealer with Access Bank.
Thank you for having me.
All right, do remember 1 p.m. Ladi Williams will be here with Will Ibong to give you fresh market numbers and perspective. 55 minutes, a whole lot. You want to join them at that time. Mini John Mekwa, let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we've got Dr. Iseko here with us. He's a consultant, interventional cardiologist at Cardio Care Hospital in Abuja. He's also a certified advanced cardiac life support trainer. He joins us here in the studios. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're talking about the unfortunate incident, the death of the customs official that happened yesterday at the Public Accounts Committee in the House of Reps, who were screening him. So the images, don't know if you can see them now, while that went on, it was really unfortunate and how that turned out. So those images are some of the things that Dr. Seko will be talking to us about this morning. And the customs did put up a statement, and well, we'll bring you that statement as soon as we can have you see them. So the death of Itop Andrew Essien is what we're focusing on here this morning. He is the man at the center where that unfortunately happened. So these are the issues that we'll be discussing. What could have happened? Could they have been prevented? And sundry matters like that. But this morning, we are going back to the House of Representatives. Our man, correspondent there, Terry Kumi, is standing by now to just get a feel of, well, many may not have seen how that room does look, the distance from there to the hospital, what are the measures there, just trying to see how all of this happened. Terry, good morning, and you're at the venue, the premises, where this unfortunate incident occurred. What do you see at the moment? Are they in session? What's going to happen?
Well, good morning, Chamberlain. I think it's an entirely sad situation. I must start by saying that, as you rightly pointed out, I'm standing just outside the office where the committee room where this happened. This is just behind me is the committee room for the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives. It's under lock and key as always, because this is the only committee that has its dedicated committee room, because it sits all year round, in fact the entire session of the Assembly. But today is a special one because the committee has decided to suspend sitting for at least 1 week in honor of the late Deputy Controller Andrew Essien, who passed away yesterday. This is the 4th floor of the new building of the House of Representatives. The clinic is about 5-10 minutes away, somewhere around the Senate wing. I don't know how familiar you are with this, but I'm trying to paint a picture of perhaps how quickly the Deputy Controller may have received assistance. Sadly, the journalists were not aware of this engagement, so we were not at this venue when the incident happened. But the truth is that the statement, rather, is that he received some medical attention from first responders and then was taken to the clinic for some attention, basically.
So, Terry, looking at the room, the visuals or where they were sitting, it looks quite, choked, as it were. So the images that the customs sent in is the one that most media houses have, which the sequence, it's the frame, the speed is kind of slower than the regular speed, and so. But clearly they just give us this part. Such that perhaps so that people don't unfortunately just make a meal out of when he eventually went down. But what is it like from that room? Do they wheel them directly if any event happens? Do they have access to wheel from there straight to the clinic? Or how is the movement? How does it usually happen?
So I think, that it's great that we're drawing attention to this, majorly because this is not the first time we've had an emergency situation at the National Assembly. I'd specifically speak about a colleague of ours who fell ill or sort of collapsed somewhere sometime a couple of years ago and was rushed to the National Assembly clinic. He received good attention. So one thing I can speak of is that there's proper attention at the National Assembly Clinic here. When we talk about the distance from here, it's quite a distance. There's quite a distance. I mean, this is the 4th floor. If a person suffers an emergency, if there are no first responders here, or regardless of whatever is done here, that person would need to still be taken to the National Assembly Clinic. There is an elevator just opposite, so you have to call the elevator, go all the way to the ground floor, and then walk quite a distance, maybe about 5 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes to access the National Assembly Clinic here. But regardless of all that, the room, as you had rightly mentioned, is quite, I'd say to an extent, conducive. To an extent, conducive. It does get choked at times, but from the footage we received, it didn't seem that way because the journalists were not present, so it was quite scanty. So we can't really question whether or not it was conducive enough, there was enough air, or was it choked at the time. But yeah, based on the parameters that I've given, I think to an extent, it was conducive for him because yes, there's air conditioning in there. So basically, that's that.
All right. Thank you. I do not have any further questions for Terry.
Now, pardon me. You said that they have to call for the lift if there happens to be an emergency. So the lift has to get there. They wheel the people into the lift before you then get to the ground and then move to the clinic. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think it's okay that we're drawing attention to this because this could be anybody. And I think that even though it's not the direct responsibility of the lawmakers to sort of set out or make sure that these facilities are in place, it's important for them to call attention of perhaps the clerk and then the Federal Capital Authority, who is the landlord of this property, Federal Capital Development Authority, to at least do some adjustments such that access to emergency health care here is, easy. I say that because it may not be easy anyways, because if we look at the committees of both the House and the Senate, we're looking at over 400 committees. Frankly speaking, over 400 committees. It may not be possible to have an emergency personnel or health personnel on ground in every sitting. So no, but they must do something to draw attention such that this doesn't happen again. There's no telling what the situation was at the time with the deputy controller who passed away. Yes, anybody could have a medical condition, but the National Assembly must play its part to make sure that it has some of these areas covered such that attention can be quickly drawn to them. So
are there ambulances just on standby there such that if anything happens, they rush you from probably the Public Accounts Committee room straight to the clinic?
Oh, yes. The National Assembly does have ambulances.
But what's the distance from that venue, the Public Accounts Committee room, to the clinic?
Well, as I said earlier, it's about, say, 5-10 minutes, but it's not a straight road. It's not a straight road. The clinic itself is somewhere around the Senate wing, just the basement, to be specific, of the Senate wing. And this is the 4th floor of the House of Representatives. It's quite a walk. You have to go all the way to the ground floor and take some left and right turns before you access that. So I give, say, 5-10 minute walk if you have an emergency and need to get there.
Okay, so just one more. Just trying to paint pictures so that people can understand what exactly might have transpired or what could have happened. So is this the new premises of the National Assembly where this Public Accounts Committee room is?
Well, it's called the new building. It's not entirely new, but it's called the new building. We've been here for many years now. I can't recall at the moment. But yes, this is where all the committees hold their meetings.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Terry. Dr. Seko, what picture do you get from that? Because if that had happened, naturally, people will think, oh, yeah, there's easy access. Just wheel him from there straight on to the clinic. In fact, some thought that the clinic is just move one door away. That's not what you get here. How is that a good scenario or manageable or what?
Okay, so first of all, I must say my sincere condolences to the family. It's an extremely sad and painful thing to see this, and to see this while televised, or to even see the last moments of someone who apparently looked healthy. So in this regard, when you come to sudden emergencies or sudden of this nature, the most important thing may not necessarily be the distance to the clinic, because this could happen anywhere. It could happen in a party, it could happen anywhere. The most important thing will be the people that are there. And Nigeria is blessed with human capital. And what do the people know about emergencies? In several places, some of these things have been put into the curriculum, have been made mandatory, part of youth service. So nobody graduates and has no clue how to identify a cardiac arrest and what to do first. The most critical time is the first minute when it happens. Not the time moving, not the time shouting. And in fact, it is better for the people to be coming to the room, the emergency responders to be rushing to the room, rather than carrying him there. Because the moment of moving, you're going to lose valuable time. Those first 5 minutes are the most critical. What they did in that room, how they handled it, will have determined life or death quite critically. And then the people can come in with their emergency response kit to take place in that room until he is stable before the movement should happen. That should be the ideal scenario. And something we try and push. Everybody, every building that has up to a certain number of people must have people equipped, able, and ideally, every Nigerian should be able to recognize and take the initial first steps when somebody collapses.
And
it could be anybody.
We have seen this sort of situation now one too many times. The first, and one of the times that we can recall, I think it happened last year, was a member, well, no, not a member, a ministerial nominee who was appearing before the National Assembly, and he collapsed in his appearance, even though he said he was fine. And what we saw the senators do, those who were in the chambers, it was quite chaotic. We were unsure of what to do. And I think as a result of that, we tried to learn from that particular scenario. I mean, doctors like yourself were invited in and they said, oh, look, all the steps we saw there were wrong. What we saw shortly after that was that the National Assembly also approved, because shortly after we started seeing videos of the National Assembly where they had defibrillators. I don't know what.
Defibrillators.
Defibrillators, that's what they're called. They put them in strategic areas, and one would think that that would prevent such a scenario, from occurring again. We also saw this, I don't know if you remember the off your mic incident, even though people were not sure if that was, cooked up or real. But we're beginning to see more and more these scenarios whereby people are appearing before the National Assembly and health issues begin to come up, and it's something that we ought to take very seriously. Yeah. It doesn't appear that we have learned much from the incidents we saw at the Senate, which occurred just last year.
Unfortunately, it appears so, but there's a lot that we can do. The first and most important step is to identify people at risk and identify areas at risk, places of high stress, places where people are gathered. If we talk about the statistics of sudden cardiac death and sudden cardiac arrest, this is something that happens 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, So by the time you're having 100, 1,000 people in a building block, at every 100 to 200 meters, a device like a defibrillator should be available. But that is only the first step. If nobody knows how to use it, it's as good as, nothing being available. So you cannot wait for the doctor or the nurse or somebody to come in. You can also wait to move in. Everybody must learn. Now, for those that are at risk, that is, a lot of times people with these conditions that lead to sudden cardiac death are unfortunately unaware because they did not have symptoms so floridly, or they are waiting for something more dramatic. One of the things that people will have noticed, if you look at the video clearly, you'll see some attempts at breath, and one of the things you'll notice is that people are getting tired easily. When they climb up a staircase, they seem to want to take a breath. They have leg swelling sometimes, and they say maybe they match poison, and so many things that Nigerians may have noticed.
Okay. I'd like us to play the video again, because it would seem that his colleagues noticed that he was in some discomfort.
Exactly.
And you could see them trying to offer him water. Exactly. It's not clear. At what point should they have, asked for the hearing to stop and say, look, this man looks like he needs medical attention. We think he's having a cardiac arrest. At what point should that have happened?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not privy to the entire scenario, but really, once somebody begins to have problem breathing, hold their chest, take some deep breaths, try and stop, people react by saying they want water, but really, something more sinister is happening. We've had several instances, and if you play the videos of Sam Okaraji and so many people that died in football matches, you will see the unfortunate Muyamba and the rest. You will see the unfortunate time event of almost 90 seconds before the first interaction. The first interaction should happen within 5 seconds. And that is those people next to him. They must be able to recognize this is a cardiac arrest. What constitutes a cardiac arrest? 1, the person starts getting unresponsive. 2, the person's breathing starts slowing down or stops breathing or starts having what we call an agonal breathing or gasp. That is, it takes 1 breath, spaced out, starts gasping. And 3, he loses a pulse. So before all of this, he's noticed some small evidence of discomfort. And very likely as the clip stops, it seems as if he's about to collapse. When that happens, what happens in the next 10 seconds will typically determine the outcome. It is said that the time to effective defibrillation, that is the shock things, or the time to begin a proper CPR will determine survival in most cases. And the American Heart Association has several studies about this. So also the Nigerian Cardiac Society, who has been at the forefront of advocacy for cardiac events.
I think we can listen to it for a bit from the beginning so that you just hear a little further and probably just make sense of what you think might actually happen to him. Let's listen to it.
Sir, I need to take water. You need to take water, sir? Yes, sir. Yes, go ahead. Or if you need tea, do you need tea? I may need to take water. Of you? Yes, sir. That's your position? That's my position, okay, sir. Okay, go ahead. Position, sir. Go ahead, sir. So, sir, the same thing applies for 2017. And 2017 can be seen in the next page. That's 2016. If you look at 2016, it then comprises other levies. The first one I picked was for only 1 levy. If you check 2016, you will see other levies. That is, you see the 30% levy on sanitary waste. You can see that's page 6. You can see the levy there. And then you also see a textile levy, cement levy, and others. So I may need to take water. You need to take water, sir? Yes, sir. Yes, go ahead. Or if you need tea, do you need tea? I may need to take water.
So we actually repeated that video. So it started out from when he started talking. Then he didn't request to take water twice. It was just a repeat. We repeated those visuals. So he only requested to take water once from the images they sent to us. That's the public accounts, the House of Reps team. So from what you saw there, right from when he started talking up until he requested to take water, what do you make of it?
So I don't want to be presumptive. I am not in a position to be presumptive about what happened. I don't have his medical history, and I cannot see what happened. And this is barely 10 seconds. What I would say is that, first of all, I feel very pained, and I feel lots of emotion watching the last minutes of somebody, that perhaps could have been saved if perhaps he had made a medical checkup. He might be having diagnosed with something that may have, people really do not just die. They typically will have had something somewhere at the background, some symptom that may have been happening. Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes they have absolutely nothing, like happens in footballers. They could be almost perfectly healthy. So when this happens, it's not very easy to make out which part of the spectrum that he falls under. For those that have sudden cardiac arrest, we have a certain group of people that have a familial tendency to sudden cardiac arrest. And that's because when the heart is formed right from their womb, it has some inherent problems in the way it transmits electricity around the heart. And so we have several symptoms, some found in families. And so when a family member has it, we typically advise others to go have a full checkup. So that is one set. Another set are those that have an acquired problem, hypertension, diabetes. Hypertension is still the highest cause in Nigeria, or a previous ischemic heart disease, that is a heart attack, where they'll be having some chest pain on and off when they try and change the tire, when they walk up a staircase. They feel some chest pain, they say, oh, maybe I did not sleep well, you know. They feel something, they say, maybe I'm just thirsty, maybe it's water I need. They're feeling breathless. Maybe when they stop what they are doing, take some water, they feel a little better, they continue. Those telltale signs are signs of something has acquired. Either one of the blood vessels is blocked, or their heart is already failing. And there are times when we've seen the perfectly healthy normal person come for a checkup, and they are literally, you know, just a tip over from a sudden cardiac arrest. Wow. And it's in such situations that in such people, you need to put in a device inside their heart, under their skin, that constantly monitors the heart. So one of such devices is this in my hand. So we put this into the heart into the chest, just under the clavicle, under the collarbone, and we connect wires to the heart. And what it does essentially is that it constantly monitors the heart rhythm of such a person.
It is inside the body, not
It's inside the body. It's behind
not a dress.
Oh, no. It's inside. It's
the
sealed,
body.
it's covered, and it stays there for 10, 15 years. It has wires connected to the heart, and we have lots of Nigerians.
Is this a pacemaker?
It is like a pacemaker, but it's an ICD. It's an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. It's like they call it a guardian angel device sometimes. It's constantly monitoring what heart rhythm is happening, and when something like that wants to happen, it sends the treatment to it, either a shock, or it races the heart a little bit further, or takes over. So these are critical for people that are at risk. They must have it. It increases length of life by 7, 10, 15 years in such people who may have otherwise gone. Okay, so some of these things are things that you don't need to be at the forefront of healthcare delivery as a whole. But now we're talking about the National Assembly. Where will the National Assembly now come in? Such advocacy to make sure that defibrillators are in public buildings are available. Such advocacy to make sure that people are trained. Such advocacy to make sure that people are checked.
Can ordinary people use that?
Everybody can use this. And that our national health insurance financing scheme can be able to cover simple devices like this. What is the cost of your life? It is really emotional for me to watch that video, and I'm just holding myself because...
It's really very sad, and I do not know, I think a different readings to it, but what I could tell, it seemed like those in the National Assembly who were doing the questioning could tell that he was in great discomfort, and were saying, sir, you need to drink water. And he could see that he requested. No, they asked him to drink water. The National Assembly people asked him to drink water. And then you could see that he struggled to open the bottle of water. He couldn't. And his colleague beside him helped him. But it wasn't like he turned and was looking at something else and did not quite notice the level of discomfort that the gentleman was in.
Which is part of what he was saying. That could it be that maybe those signs, I think I missed it in NYC, how to recognize that somebody needs help.
Yeah.
So from their position, could they have noticed that, wait a minute, something doesn't seem to be right here?
Unfortunately, it does take some training. So one of the things that, for the layperson, what you will notice is particularly when he drops. But just before he drops, it seems that he stops and he looks like a blank gaze in a particular direction, somewhat, from the short 5 seconds clip. Typically, when the blood supply is getting cut to the brain, the person kind of either stops. Sometimes some people have what looks like a seizure. What we must not do, what we absolutely must not do, is to panic, is to shout, is to start carrying him to somewhere, is to put a spoon in his mouth, is to put pepper in his eye, is to put his leg in fire, is to pour anointing oil on his head. That is what we absolutely should not do.
But the National Assembly people who noted and were saying, sir, you need to drink water, and they were saying, even if you need tea, it would seem that they thought that the questions they were asking him perhaps were making him uncomfortable and, maybe asked him to drink some water. But at that point, assuming they could identify the symptoms, and I think this is very important, the National Assembly people who are going to be doing this question be trained on what the symptoms are. Assuming they could identify the symptoms, what should have happened immediately?
Okay, so assuming they could identify the symptoms, what should have happened should have been brought to the ground, and he would have had a cardiac arrest. But we know that people that have ischemic heart disease. That is blood supply to their hearts is slightly reduced. So likely they'll be having some chest pain on and off in the past. We know that those chest pain is triggered by exercise, by stress, by high emotional events, anxiety, sexual activity, anger, and they typically have such episodes. So it's not uncommon to find it happen during such a session. Now, when it does happen, and he's had a cardiac arrest, 50% of people that have the heart attack leading to cardiac arrest die instantly.
Wow.
Now, some people can be saved if there was a bystander, somebody that watched it happen. And what they must do is to do immediate CPR.
Let's get there immediately because we're out of time. We don't know if he lay on his back at some point. We don't know what transpired because that's where the images stopped. So could you just tell us, in the event that they need to perform something to save him, how do we do that?
All right, so the first step, of course, is to check that the area is safe. That's the first step. There's no electrical wire hanging. There was nothing that, triggered him so that you don't rush there. That's the first general step in anybody that collapses anywhere. Once you have done that, the next thing is to confirm or to recognize what is happening. So you confirm the cardiac arrest. The cardiac arrest is confirmed by three things. Number one is the person responsive. Hello, sir, which will likely have happened immediately after the clip stopped. He will have dropped. Hello, sir. And then the next thing is to check whether he's breathing. And how do you do that? You take your ear to the nose and your eyes pointing at his tummy to see whether he's breathing. So I think Chamberlain can do that. No, your eyes are pointing in the right direction.
Your ear
correct.
to the nose, and
ear
then
to the nose.
eye to the tummy.
I have my IFB here, so I'll be hearing the director.
Exactly. So you want to hear whether he's breathing and your eye to the nose.
Belly,
like this,
to the belly,
and
so that you can see whether he's breathing. Now, at the same sitting, while you are doing that, you want to be able to feel for the pulse. So you can feel our Adam's apple there, just down the Adam's apple, slide to the right or to the left a bit, slide to the right or to the left a bit, you will feel a pulse. And it's quite easy if you're at home, try it with somebody seated next to you. You should be able to feel something going boom, 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 just right down to the side of that throat on either side. You should be able to do all these checks within 5 seconds. 5 to 10 seconds of that. I need water, and the next thing likely he collapses. You should be looking at this, looking there, and your hand here. So it's like this, at the same sitting. Now you have confirmed the cardiac arrest. He's unresponsive, he's not breathing, and his pulse is not, meaning he has no heartbeat. What do you do next? The next thing to do is to call for help. Help, help. What does help mean? That's the next problem. Help means get one of these. Ideally should have been stationed within 300, 200 meters of any place in the National Assembly and any public building or any place. Something is like this is called an AED. It's cheap, relatively. And somebody's bringing this, medical personnel are coming, EMS is coming from the National Assembly clinic or wherever it is, and then after you've called for help, you now start compressions. The American Heart Association has come up with hands-only CPR, which is that even if you use only your hands without doing mouth-to-mouth, you still give the person a very high chance of survival. So what is that CPR? CPR involves, number one, taking your dominant hand, which in my case is my right hand. If you're at home and it's your left hand, it could be this. Putting it at the center of the chest, right down in the lower part of the chest, between the two breasts, or between the two nipples, right there. Taking your non-dominant hand and locking it in. Okay? Now, once you've done that, if you're at home, practice, look at it and do it. You cannot do this if you've not practiced before. Your elbows should be locked, so your elbow should not be like this. It should be locked and straight. You want the motion to come from your shoulders. Now you want to press the chest at 100 to 120 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as well, you want to press to a depth of about 5 centimeters. 5 centimeters is about 2 fingers breadth. When done properly, if you do an autopsy, you will likely see some small fractures because in the process you will have done that.
All right. I'm afraid time is up, so at least we've saved the life. If we do that, the life will be saved. Dr. Seko, thank you very much for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Chamberlain and so. Goodbye.
Don't forget to practice. Take it very seriously and get to practice. Thank you, Amal Pelgrim, Yusuf.
Oh, Amaya Makide, do have a wonderful day.
The following is a paid presentation by ShopX TV.
Tired of pans that scratch and stick? Or cookware that takes up valuable space in your kitchen? Introducing ShopX Gotham Hammered Copper Collection, the perfect cookware to upgrade your cooking experience. The Gotham Hammered Copper Collection features a super durable ultra non-stick surface. Eggs stick to other pans, but with the Hammered Copper Collection, they slide right out. Incredible! It's oven safe up to 500 degrees. Any recipe can be made in these pans, and then it wipes clean with ease. Make mouth-watering jollof rice or even fluffy pounder with ease, because nothing sticks.
I needed a cookware to keep up with me. The Gotham Hammered Collection has been a game changer. No more burnt meals or hours spent scrubbing pots.
You could be paying over $490,000 for a collection of pans that are not even non-stick. Call the number on your screen now and get it for just 364,950 Naira. If you order now, we will upgrade you to the Premier Kitchen Collection at no extra charge and also include all-in-one food processor that blends, grinds, chops, dices, pounds yam, and makes smoothies in seconds. Place your order now and we will deliver the entire collection for free. The following was a paid presentation from ShopX TV.
Good morning and welcome to News Track. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Thank you for joining